Aloha, everybody. Welcome to Ho'oikaika. This is Gavon Wong, the first episode. And here I got my longtime friend I've known for, sheesh, how long has it been now? 30, almost 30 years, bro. Yeah, it's been about 30 years. But yeah, we knew each other since college. And then, long story short, I found out that he was my cousin, which is not too far-fetched when you get two Hawaiian Chinese boys, one last name Wong, the other last name Tong, right? I mean, seems pretty natural. But anyway, I'm going to introduce you folks to my cousin, Nolan Tong. Brother, you want to give us a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up on the mainland, but come from a family. There's 6 kids, and my mom and dad are both from Oahu, born and raised on Oahu. Kahuku, my mom, Kaneohe, my dad. I live on the mainland. I live in the Bay Area, California Bay Area.
Okay.
I'm working out here, so I don't know.
No worries, bro. Like I said, free flow. Well, what about how often would you come visit Hawaii?
Well, growing up, it was kind of tough because we had a lot of kids, and stuff. But we came like once when I was young. But then as I got older, I was able to go on my own more. So I after around college time, came out there usually at least once a year, sometimes 3 times a year. Just kind of visit friends, family. Because most of my aunts and uncles and cousins are over there still. And a lot of my friends too. So I love going back to Hawaii and visiting.
That's cool, man. I gotta admit, when I moved to Utah to go college, I never really met before that. I never really met too many Hawaiians not from Hawaii. I was over here pretty much my whole life, and then leave till I was 17. And it was interesting to get the perspective from people like you, being native Hawaiian ancestry, but not being from Hawaii. Well, what were some of the things that you had to deal with growing up being a native Hawaiian in the mainland? If you don't mind sharing some of those things.
Tell you the truth, when I was really young, I didn't totally understand what I was. Growing up, where I grew up I grew up in Orange County, Southern California, and the place I grew up mostly Haoles, and I was kind of a minority, and so I kind of got lumped in with the Asians. I am part Asian, and so everybody thought I was Asian, and people used to make fun of me because I was a little bit different, and then I didn't even know I was Hawaiian. I didn't really know what I was because I just, and I realized later on in life that, my mom and dad, I always thought we were kind of different because we didn't fit in with the rest of the people in the neighborhood. When I went over to people's house to eat, they had different food. And when I invited my friends over, they were like, "Oh, what do you guys eat different food?" And I was, tell you the truth, that sometimes I was a little bit embarrassed because I noticed that we were a little bit different than everybody else. And I was, it wasn't until when I got older towards college age and I started hanging out, I had some Hawaiian friends, some local guys. And one time we were all talking, and there's some Haole guys there too. And they were all talking, and the Haole guys were like, "Hey, what are they saying?" And I was like, "Oh, I understood everything was going on, but these guys, I didn't realize that they didn't understand what was going on." And I was like, "Oh, wow." All the pidgin, all the Hawaiian, the Japanese, all the different words they were using. I was like, it was just second nature to me. I just understood, So it was kind of interesting. And I was like, "Oh, wow. All the stuff that I grew up with is not all that weird." It's actually, my parents actually raised us with a lot of even though I didn't grow up on the islands, I actually understood because my mom and dad use Hawaiian words all the time with us, and I didn't even understand. I couldn't decipher. I remember when I was in elementary school, I had to go to the bathroom, and I remember I raised my hand. It's like, "I gotta go shishi," and the teacher was like, "What the heck is that?" And I gotta go shishi. And she's like, you need to use the correct words. And I was like, you have, and I was like, that is the word. But anyway, I was just different, like I didn't understand that. I just kind of grew up, in a Hawaiian home, a local home. My parents are both from Hawaii, but and raised us with a lot of the, I guess, the customs and the words. But I didn't realize it until I started hanging out with people in Hawaii that I was like, oh, I'm actually, if I grew up in Hawaii, this is all the stuff I in our home would have been normal. Even the food we ate, just rice with everything, spam, hot, like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I heard similar things from Pono. Yeah, a similar friend of ours, Pono Kelly. He kind of went through the same thing. But him, his parents are like so deep in the culture, right? So that's why you never would have thought he was from the mainland, right?
That's true. Yeah.
A similar situation. What about when you started adulthood, coming into college, going for your education, going into your career? How was being Polynesian a factor in the things that you did and the things you accomplished and the way people treated you? How was that? Just curious.
Well, I guess as I was in college, being in Utah, you kind of stand out, right? And it was kind of nice to be able to identify, with. I was like, oh wow, like there's people like me because where I grew up, I was pretty much, there wasn't too many people that looked like me, but I was like, wow, there's a lot of people, and some of the things that the way I was raised, for instance, people could relate, like with you and me, like a lot of things we just clicked, and I was like, oh wow, people understand me, even the way my parents raised me, like it just made sense when I started hanging out with you and a lot of our friends. But some of the things that my dad, I didn't realize were Polynesian necessarily, or like just Hawaii type things. Uh, my dad, like I remember, like he had certain things about like his example. My dad was a really hard worker. Like sometimes he worked. I remember. I think he worked 4 jobs at one time. But I know for sometimes he was working 3 jobs. And I remember him. My dad, who was always hard worker, and he always expected us as kids to work hard too. Like he didn't want to see my brother just sitting around. If we were sitting around and my mom was working, he'd kind of get annoyed and go, "Hey, go help your mom."
Hey,
Stuff like
gotta
that.
feel cool. Like, come on, what you guys doing?
Yeah, he and he always would say "kokua," like "kokua," hey boys, "kokua," like, and we were like, I people, my friends would be hanging out with us like, what's your dad? What language is your dad speaking? What's he saying? And I was like, oh, okay, he's. I didn't realize that. But like my dad, he would tell us, he was like, you know, it doesn't matter what you do in life, for work, as long as it's honest work. And I always remember that because my dad, he worked 3 jobs sometimes. I remember, and I was like, man, I really admire that. And so
What were the jobs that he had, if you don't mind me asking?
um,
What did he do?
so I remember he was a mailman and a postal carrier, and he was like a salesman on the side. Sometimes he did sales full time, but I remember it particularly when I was a teenager. He was a mailman, he did sales, and he was a custodian. Uh, he did all 3 of those, and then at one time I think he had 2 sales jobs. So that's where he got 4 at one time. But I just remember that ethic of hard work and honest work that my dad, he would always try to instill that in us, all of us kids. I have 4 older sisters, and there's me and my brother at the bottom. But especially me and my brother, he always like kind of, yeah, I wouldn't say grinded into us, but he wanted us to know that, hey, he instilled that in us. And even when we would go uh, in the summertime when we wanted to play, he's like, hey boys, like I want you guys to go have fun, but you need to do some work every day. So it was always like this thing of like, so even when I was on my own when I was in college, I always felt like I had to work. I had this like thing instilled in me that I can't be lazy. I have to be doing something productive or working. And that is, I don't know what it is, but that's just I've always had that, and I appreciate that about my dad. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know
man.
if that answered your question.
Oh yeah, no, it totally does. And you added some other stuff too. It was cool. It's kind of interesting too, yeah, because I remember growing up as a kid, always hearing about how mainland people think that we lazy or we so laid back, you know, and sometimes they'll think the laid back is being lazy. And I remember being so ticked off when I would hear that. I'm like, bro, there's no way you can be lazy, especially if you're living in Hawaii, where the cost of living is ridiculous. You know, you got to be making 6 digits just to be considered middle class, you know?
Yeah.
You can barely survive over here. There's no room to be lazy over here, you know. And if you ever talk story with Polynesians while they were raised, bro, they work hard. Their parents make them work hard, you know. And I that was
Yard
one of
work,
the what was that? What you said?
yard work. We were always doing yard work.
Bro, we was always cleaning. Bro, we was living in Papakolea. We had clean grass and everything like that. Cut yard. Sometimes get centipedes in the back. And never mind, just go cut the grass. You know, it's crazy though. But yeah, it's I guess that's kind of been one thing that I admire about people that break stereotypes like yourself, or like, you know, we always hear about these other stereotypes that we see, and then people just break them from whatever kind of race they are, and they break them. You know, I think it's really cool. For could you talk about your education and the type of work that you do? Like what was your education in, and what do you do for work?
So I graduated with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Facilities Management, which is a lot like construction management, but it's the whole lifespan of the building. Yeah. So I learned a lot of those principles, you know, the business minor that you get, things. But out of college, I actually started working in the manufacturing industry, production management type things, and I worked for Toyota for 3 years. And I was a production supervisor. So they sent me to Japan. I went to Toyota City, learned all this stuff. And there's in Fremont, California, where I live now, there is a plant that they manufactured the Toyota Corolla and the Tacomas. And so I worked on a team, like I supervised a team that, or two teams that did the wheels and tires for each of those production lines. So, you know, it was a good job. I learned, it was a startup company for Toyota, learned a lot, worked my tail off. Uh, but it was, I always use this, but it was kind of like Groundhog's Day, that movie, where it's the same thing over and over. No matter how hard you work, you come back in the next day and it's the same thing over. Tires, wheels, tires, wheels. And I was like, you know, this is a good job, hard work. It's okay pay, you know, decent pay, but I was like, I don't see myself here the rest of my life. And I was like, this isn't even what I went to school for, you know, at college. I didn't study this. And I was grateful for the job, but I was like, so I started taking real estate classes to get my real estate license, because I knew that was a lot closer to what I went to school for, and I was more interested in that. So I got my real estate license at night. You know, I was taking some night classes, and then I decided to, you know, pursue that, or you know, to go that way. And I gave my 2 weeks notice at Toyota, and I was looking around for jobs and that, and I saw this thing called appraiser. Like this guy was hiring appraiser, and I was like, appraiser, real estate appraiser. I was like, huh. And I talked to him, I interviewed with him, and I was like, you know, this is kind of interesting because I could still do sales later, but if I understand what makes a property, what makes real estate valuable, what, you know, how you value it, I could become a better salesperson. Um, so, but this is for home, you know, residential appraiser. And so I did that. I did that for 3 years, and it was a great job. Learned a lot. But after I got my residential license, I was like, you know, this is good, but there's got to be more. And so I had a friend that was telling me about commercial appraisal, you know, appraising commercial real estate. So it's like, you got to go do that. You got to do that. So I applied to a couple places, um, and I interviewed with one, and it was kind of, they were kind of thinking about hiring me, but it, you know, it didn't work out. And then another company hired me, and that's the one I'm still with to this day. I've been with them since, you know, in 2005. So I've been with them for like 17 years. But yeah, it's been an interesting career path. I praise all kinds of different real estate. kind of weird. And more recently, I've been getting into a lot of litigation type appraisals. So like where people hire you as an expert witness or things. So I've been working a lot with that. Um, I do these things. I just do a lot of the weird appraisals now. Like I can do the normal, apartments or retail centers, but now I do a lot of like interesting, weird things, and it's good. I mean, this is a field where if you like to learn, you'll never be bored because you have every property, everything is different, and you're always learning. And it's just it's it. I can't complain. It's been a good ride.
I remember before you became an appraiser, I was still in college, and then you had already started working. I remember you telling me about 80-hour work weeks, like something like that. Yeah. I think it was Toyota. Yeah. I was like, what? I was like, is the pay worth it? I remember you telling me, heck no way. Okay, 8 hours a week.
Yeah, the first Christmas they made us work. The guys running the top down. All these guys are from Japan, and they're like, they didn't know the American holidays and stuff like. So they were making us work. And their plant manager, he was American. He's like, you can't do this to us. Like,
oh yeah.
I worked a 23-hour day one time, and
what?
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was when we were starting up the plant. It was just. But yeah, no. Anyway, good experiences.
Oh, that's crazy, bro. Cultural clash. Interesting you bring that up because that's probably another good segue too. When you got cultural clashes happening, it causes a lot of issues, miscommunications and whatnot. And it's so I always felt like it's super important for people to get to know a variety of different cultures, outside of your own, because it just helps a lot. Has that been helpful for you? Because I know you've been very open, and I know you got friends from all over the place. Just letting you guys know out there on the internet land that this guy, we kind of tease him as being like the mayor because he knows everybody. He knows everybody. Every time I'm walking around with this guy, either in Hawaii, mainland, wherever we at, everybody knows this guy. But I guess I gotta ask you about that. Like how has that helped you? How are you able to build those relationships with all these different people from all these walks of life, all these demographics?
I mean, I don't know how exactly I do it, but I've always just been interested in people and cultures. When I was a little kid, I used to collect stamps, and I used to because I wanted to learn about countries. I was just interested in countries, so I had all these stamps from all over the world, and I just looked at them like, like I don't. And then I would read encyclopedias about different countries and places. I was just fascinated. So I think it was just natural when I meet people, I'm just interested in them. I think I got that from my dad. My dad's really interested in people, and I got a degree of that from him. But I'm just so like when I went to school and when we were at school, there are Latins, Native Americans, like people from Europe, Africa, Polynesians, like all different types of Polynesian. Like there's a lot of times there's people say Polynesian, but there's different islands and they have different cultures and they have different things. And so yeah, it was such a cool place to be in college where we were because there was all these different groups of people, and for the most part people were pretty open, and you could go hang out with them, go Latin dancing, do all kind of different things, like the Native Americans at the powwows, so I was just fascinated. It was just so interesting for me to learn these things. So I don't know if I don't have any advice or anything, but I'm just interested. I really am fascinated, and so I think I made a lot of friends because of that.
I'm same thing, man. My dad is the same way. I think, just being from Hawaii, that's how it kind of was. You get to know people. They didn't have social media back then. You'd walk over to people's houses and talk story with them just to get to know them and whatnot. And same thing with him. Like we'd be walking around, and my dad always knew somebody, or he would talk to somebody just out of the blue, and he'd be like, "Hey, you look familiar." Da 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 da. And same thing with him. He's the mayor. I think because people tell me the same thing too. Like I'm pretty friendly and outgoing, and I get along well with people. So I think that's one of those things about being Hawaiian, having that aloha spirit, and just being willing to get to know people. Uh, I think that in our culture has helped us a lot. I know
So is
it's
that
helped
a
me a
Hawaii
lot.
thing? Or
Uh,
is that a Hawaii thing? Just getting to know people or wanting to know.
I think so because I mean I don't know. I mean maybe it's just maybe it's just our parents. Maybe it's just our dads are like that. But I kind of seem it kind of seems that way to me. Like when I've gone to other activities, and always talk story with some other folks, and they talk about how hey, like especially on my mission when I was in Japan, they talk about oh yeah the Hawaii guys. Everybody knows the Hawaii guys. That was like the
Yeah,
thing. Everybody would always talk about stuff, and then look at when we were at school going church the Polynesian ward. Dude, they had to get rid of it. Why? Because everybody was going to the Polynesian ward, bro. You know what I mean? It's just I don't know. It's just island
it was too
thing, man.
social. There's the
I
thing.
mean, if you kind of think about it too, right? The whole psychology of living on an island. I think our ancestors probably had to go to war a lot, right? Because competing for resources. But then now it's like, hey, we can't be doing that. So now we got to learn how to get along. So it's kind of the mentality of getting to know each other so we can move forward and get along. I don't know. I remember my dad telling me one time, he said, a person that I don't like is a person that I don't know. And I remember that stuck with me like my whole life. And then I was just like, oh, that's a good one. Like basically if somebody is rubbing you the wrong way, try to get to know them and find out, hey, what's going on. And then, you probably find out that that person's actually pretty cool. As I remember him telling that, and that stuck with me. Hey, I'm going to ask you this question now. What would be some advice that you would like to say or give to some of our fellow Polynesian brothers out there about just dealing with life or even just dealing with stress, especially now with, all the things that are happening in our world right now? Like, how do you maintain that healthy lifestyle, physically, mentally, everything? What's your
Wow,
advice?
that's a big question. But you got to find healthy outlets. You know, uh, I I mean my outlet that I love is surfing. Try to go as much as I can, but I do go to the gym because I don't live exactly close to the beach, so I do go to the gym when I can't get down there. But unfortunately, I don't live close to my family, and that's one of the things that I really miss. My family, friends, like just being able to hang. Most of you guys are over in Hawaii or in Utah, but you know, yeah, I'm sorry. What's the question again?
No, that's cool. Like, just basically, what kind of advice you want to give to some of our fellow Polynesian brothers out there that are just going through life and struggling with whatever it is right now? What are like some tips? What helped you overcome those challenges or stresses in life that you want to share or whatnot? Yeah, asking you now because we only get a little bit of time left, but no worry, just take your time.
That's a deep question. I wish I had a little more time to think about that and answer for that. One thing I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but I think a lot of people when they're down, some like my dad. I don't know how to bring this out, but I know a lot of times people say Polynesians get angry, you know, and they have a bad temper and things like that. And I grew up in a home with a dad that he was the friendliest, most loving guy. But as soon as he got ticked, that he hit that line, he could get pretty angry, like violent. And um, so I saw that side, and I respected my dad. I was scared of him sometimes, but I remember like he would get kind of physical, especially on me, and I really appreciate my dad for this because it was a pattern where he grew up with this, in a home like that. But he said, you know what, this this pattern, this excessive anger, anger is a natural emotion. Everybody, we all deal with it. but how there's healthy ways to deal with it, and there's not unhealthy ways to deal with it. And my dad grew up with a model of unhealthy behavior, and he would take it out physically, excessively hard, especially on me, because I was the oldest son. He was the oldest son. I think there was a pattern in his family. But he said, you know what? This stops with this generation. He felt so bad after he would he would beat the heck out of me. I guess I don't know about a person, but and so he said, this is going to stop. So he took our whole family. We went to counseling, and we worked through this. And my dad realized that there's healthy ways, and I learned that there's healthy ways because I was starting to develop these, violent behavior things. And this was at a young age. I think I was about 11 or 12. Maybe I was like 13 or 14. But I'm grateful for my dad for doing that, because I think a lot of times when we are feeling low or bad in life, we look for an outlet. And I know that my dad sometimes would turn to that violence, like he'd picket things wrong, and even though I was just a little kid, I didn't know what's going on, but he'd pick things on me, and then he'd use that as a way to like get mad at me, and then he would take it out on me. And I'm grateful for my dad to realize that pattern, that it was a pattern that he didn't understand exactly why he did it, but he wanted to break that chain. And because of that, my life is blessed, and our family's life is blessed. And we have learned to talk about it in a healthy way. And so we don't have to have that continue into the next generation. And I don't know, a lot of people have this negative stereotype sometimes about Polynesians and their anger, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I've seen, not all Polynesians are like that. Not all Hawaiians are like that. Because I've seen very healthy fathers in the way that they treat their children. And I'm like, you know what? That's not right. We can't just put everybody in this big, like ball, and you guys are all the same. And if it is happening, we do have a choice. We can perpetuate it, or we can stop it. So I don't know if that answers. That's a good answer.
Yeah, brother. Thanks a lot for sharing that, man. That's some deep stuff. I know for a fact that there's going to be people that listen to this particular episode and it's going to hit home for them, bro. So thanks for sharing that, man. Honestly, I can't thank you enough. I'm actually going to end it right now just because for the sake of time. But bro, I appreciate everything you do, man. You know how I feel about you, bro. I've known you for how long already, and when we found out we were family, it's just like, yeah, we kind of knew that. We kind of knew we were family already. So the fact that your auntie revealed that we were actually cousins, that wasn't so far-fetched, bro. I thought, yeah, it just made sense. But no, I appreciate you, man, for being an example for me too, even though we're only 3 years apart. And just helping me, getting adjusted while I was going to BYU too, because not leaving home that often, living on an island for most of my life, and then getting over there, having friends and family around was probably what I needed the most when I moved to Utah and stuff. And so it was cool meeting you, especially, and a lot of other guys. It's been a big help for me. So, and sharing all the stuff. Well, I hope I was able to. But yeah, man. No, I appreciate you, man. Love you, bro.
Love you, cousin.
Yeah. But thanks for doing this episode. Who knows, folks? We might see Nolan again in another episode. But yeah, don't forget to post, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode of Ho'i Kaika. Mahalo. Peace.